This show is brought to you by our friends at bayphoto.com. Head over after the show to print something amazing. Be sure to check out their specials at bayphoto.com/specials.
Hi, I'm Luke Ayers. I'm a self-taught photographer, working professionally now for over a decade. And in this video, I want to talk about my approach or my philosophy to photography, being someone who never went to school to learn photography. So let's just go over some basic concepts right now. And while I'm thinking of it, let's just go into a first myth which I wasted years believing. And this myth is that your camera equals a good photo. If you don't have a good camera, you can't take a good photo. That is BS. That is BS. Whoever told you that or wherever you read that, block them, unfriend them. They are not giving you workable information. Yes, all these buttons do something, but there's only 3 controls of a camera that you actually need to know to take good photos, okay? The rest of these are just little bonus features that you learn after you can already take a good photo to help you to make things more convenient, these sorts of things, okay? Now, the 3 controls of a camera, the 3 most basic controls of a camera, aside from the button that you push to actually take a photo, okay? The 3 controls are this. The first control, what's inside here. Now, I mentioned before film. These days in digital cameras, digital meaning computerized cameras, you have something in there called a sensor. A sensor is like a little computer chip thingy that just when light hits it, it saves it. It saves the light. Okay, like film saves an imprint, this saves an imprint of it, but then it turns it into a little digital file that you can put on your YouTube, on your Instagram and stuff like that later on. Okay. Now the first control of a camera is adjusting how sensitive that sensor is to the light. This control is called ISO. Okay, the word ISO is not a word at all, it's an abbreviation. ISO stands for an organization that invented it as a measurement system. ISO stands for International Standards Organization. Okay, but basically the ISO control adjusts how sensitive this sensor is to the light, okay? If you're in a dark environment, you can make it more sensitive so that even though there's only a little bit of light, your camera still records a full, nicely bright image. Or if you're outside and in sunshine and it's too bright, you can turn down the sensitivity to make it darker, your picture, okay? That's the ISO setting, okay? And there's only 2 more controls to know. Second control is this thing. It's that thing that just went, it's that thing that goes click, 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 that we've all heard. That's called a shutter, all right? A shutter is called a shutter because it opens and it shuts again. It opens and it shuts, okay? Now what that is basically it's a little door that covers this, all right? Because if the door was always open, light would always be coming in and you wouldn't be able to have any control over what moment in time you wanted to capture. So the shutter allows you to specify, I want to capture this moment, or I want to capture this moment, or I want to capture a longer moment or a shorter moment, okay? How you use shutter, and the control of it is called shutter speed, meaning how long this door, this shutter stays open for, is how long it stays open for. Shutter speed. If you want to capture a very definite pinprick of a moment, as in like a fast moving object, a horse running in a field, and you wanted to just really freeze that horse in time, you would select a really fast shutter speed, meaning that door is only staying open for like a fraction, a millisecond of time, okay? Oppositely, if you wanted to capture something that had what's called motion blur in it, as in, like if you've seen those photographs of cars going down the highway at night and their headlights just become these streaks that look like circus lights, just, or you get a little sparkler and you just wave it around for a second and then in the photograph it's drawn a picture. Using a slow shutter speed will keep the shutter open the entire time that you're creating this motion, and it saves all the motion into a single image. It's not the same motion as in a video, whereas in, you can see me moving. Now I'm here, now I'm here. No, it imprints everything on the same shot. So you get this effect of blur, okay, motion blur. That's shutter speed, and that's the second control. And that's two of the only three controls you really need to know when you're getting started. Third control is what is contained inside the lens itself. Now, this third control is called aperture. Now, before you get confused by that word and think, oh my God, this is like a professor talking. No, the word aperture literally means a hole, okay? The aperture is this hole you can see inside this lens. Can you see that? Opening and closing. The aperture setting is merely changing how open or closed that hole is, okay? Now, the more open your aperture is when it's on your camera, the more light can enter your camera at the same time, all right? Now, one thing to know is that these three controls, while they're slightly different, they essentially do the same thing. Your ISO adjusts how bright or dark your photo will be. The shutter speed, the longer the shutter is open, the brighter your photo will be, because more light can come in for a longer period of time. Or if you wanted a darker photo, you would make the shutter speed shorter, okay? Aperture does the same thing. The more open your aperture is, the more light can come in, thus your resulting photo will be bright. If you have a very closed, small aperture, very little light can come through, so your photo will be dark, okay? These three things together make up this photography term called the exposure triangle. I never learned that word because I'm self-taught, but if I went to school, I'm sure they would tell me about this exposure triangle. Basically means that all three controls do the same damn thing, make the photo brighter or darker. But the reason they're different controls is because they can do slightly different things, as in the shutter speed can capture a fraction of time or a long period of time. Now the aperture, in addition to making the photo brighter or darker, of course, has another special effect to it. And this is to do with how light works. Contact your scientist in your community if you want to understand this better, but I'm going to explain this simply. The more open your aperture is, the less of your photo will be in focus. Focus means what point in the distance from your camera is the clearest to see. A point which is not in focus will appear soft or blurry. A point which is in focus will appear, sharp, clear, that sort of a thing. Now the lens itself can control how far away, what point in the distance will be in focus. But the aperture, depending on how big or small it is, will control how much of the entire distance away from the camera is in focus. Meaning, say you're taking a portrait of someone and you want a blurry background. You only want them in focus and you want all the background full of people to just disappear into mush. Then open up your aperture very wide as it goes. And some lenses can open up very wide, some cannot. That's why there's different types of lenses available. Oppositely, if you wanted to take a photo of a landscape and you wanted everything in focus, from the grass at your feet to the mountains in the distance, then you would make your aperture very small, okay? That's like concentrating the light, and for scientific reasons, it makes everything clear and nothing will be blurry, okay? Friends, that's the three controls of the camera, okay? Ignore all this, please, just for starters, okay? If you're like me, and when I first started, I was just like, oh, let's learn what photography is. And then someone comes along to you and just says, well, the first and most important thing is you should learn where your focus point is on your autofocus matrix. And I would be lost in time, and I would just be like, photography is not for me. Photography is not for me. This is like Buddha, Einstein stuff, okay? Okay, because you got to learn it in a particular order to really get it. What I've just told you, these three controls are the first controls you need to master, okay? Forget all these other things. Once you've mastered three controls, you can master more of them, okay? So, ask me your questions. I appreciate you wanting to be a photographer, and I will help you become a photographer because it is so much fun. It is so rewarding. So get out there, start practicing. Don't worry about, am I doing it right? No, take photos. Just take photos. Enjoy yourself, all right? And learn piece by piece and you'll be pro.
Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.